Okay, guys, this is my third time recording pages 14 and 15. I don't know why it's being a bugger, but hopefully third time's a charm. So we're picking up top of page 14, yes. Things went from bad to worse until finally he had to give up his position. So now we're talking about the silver polisher. So they're kind of making fun of their employees, the people who work for them. For a moment the last sunshine fell with romantic affection upon her glowing face. Her voice compelled me forward breathlessly as I listened. So we have Nick falling under her spell, and we know this happens. We've been told this. She can manipulate people this way. Then the glow faded, each light deserting her with lingering regret, like children leaving a pleasant street at dusk. The butler came back and murmured something close to Tom's ear, whereupon Tom frowned, pushed back his chair, and without a word went inside, as if his absence quickened something within her. And you'll notice, because it's the third time I'm reading this, I already have this passage highlighted on the text. We have to note this. Daisy leaned forward again, her voice glowing and singing. So Tom leaves. And when Tom leaves the room, it's like Daisy goes into full kind of flirt mode. And it has nothing to do with Nick and everything to do with Tom, because Daisy has pretty much figured out why Thomas had to leave the room. We're about to find out why he had to leave the room in a second. I love to see you at my table, Nick. You remind me of a rose, an absolute rose, doesn't he? She turned to Miss Baker for confirmation. An absolute rose? People, this is insane. First of all, I don't generally think of men as flowers or women as flowers, to be quite honest. And this bullish, hulky kind of man that Tom has been described of, he's going to be a rose. This is just her being um, fantastic. She's performing, she's flirting. This was untrue. I'm not even faintly like a rose. She was only extemporizing. And if you look up the word extemporize, it means to perform. And that's the mode that Daisy is usually in. She's very superficial. She's very flirty. She's performing right now for Nick. But a stirring warmth flowed from her, as if her heart was trying to come out to you, concealed in one of those breathless, thrilling words. Then suddenly she threw her napkin on the table and excused herself and went into the house. Miss Baker and I exchanged a short glance, consciously devoid of meaning. So the two people who are left behind, the two guests at this dinner, are looking at each other, and they very carefully keep their faces blank. They each have feelings, but they're not going to let one another know those feelings because they don't know each other. I was about to speak when she sat up alertly and said, "Shh," in a warning voice. A subdued, impassioned murmur was audible in the room beyond, and Miss Baker leaned forward, unashamed, trying to hear. So she's eavesdropping. The murmur trembled on the verge of coherence, sank down, mounted excitedly, and then ceased altogether. "This Mr. Gatsby you spoke of is my neighbor," Nick said. "Don't talk. I want to hear what happens." "Is something happening?" I inquired innocently. "You mean to say you don't know?" said Miss Baker, honestly surprised. "I thought everybody knew." "I don't." "Why," she said hesitantly, "Tom's got some woman in New York." "Got some woman?" I repeated blankly. So this isn't sinking into Nick. What's going on? Miss Baker nodded. "She might have the decency not to telephone him at dinner time, don't you think?" Almost before I grasped her meaning, there was the flutter of a dress and the crunch of leather boots, and Tom and Daisy were back at the table. Now we have to pause for a second and remind ourselves that it's 1922. And I'd like to think that if it was 1522, men still didn't get to have mistresses, kind of thing. But 1922, it would have been acceptable because of how society worked. Guys, Tom is the bull moose. He is the man of the house, man of the family. He's got this old wealth. Daisy comes from wealth too, but Tom's family's even wealthier. We're going to find out. My gosh, he gets to do anything he wants. And in 1922, a wife really didn't get to speak up. Daisy could leave him. There would be a bit of a scandal if she did. She could divorce him. There would be quite a scandal if she divorced him. She wouldn't be able to keep her child if she chose to divorce him. So at this time, it is just expected that women will let their husbands do what husbands do. Boys will be boys, kind of thing. And for one of the first times, it makes me feel just a little bit sorry for Daisy. She irritates the heck out of me. I can't stand her, but yet her husband's cheating on her, and there's nothing she can do about it. And that kind of makes me a little bit heartbroken. So we have Tom and Daisy who are back in the room now. It couldn't be helped. Daisy, with tense gaiety, she's forcing this frivolity, this joyfulness, trying to hide what had just happened. She sat down, glanced searchingly at Miss Baker, and then at me and continued. So that searching glance is worth noting. She's wondering if Jordan Baker has figured out what really happened. She's also probably wondering if Jordan Baker shared with Nick what was going on. I looked outdoors for a minute, and it's very romantic outdoors. There's a bird on the lawn that I think might be a nightingale from over in the cunard or White Star Line. He's singing away. Her voice saying, "It's romantic, isn't it, Tom?" So there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, it is utterly insane to think that a nightingale rides over on a passenger ship from England on the Cunard Line or the White Star Line. That's just fantastic. And notice she's back to that sing-song voice, and she's trying to engage Tom now because it's a little bit desperate, but it reflects some of Daisy's desperation. She wants to pull her husband back in. Very romantic, Tom said. And then miserably to me, if it's light enough after dinner, I want to take you down to the stables. So Tom's miserable because he's caught. His mistress is calling him at home, which is a no-no. His wife knows exactly what's going on. He's setting up this escape with Nick. Hey, Nick, if we have time, let's go down to the stables after dinner. So let's ditch the ladies kind of thing. The telephone rang inside again, startlingly, and as Daisy shook her head decisively at Tom, the subject of the stables, in fact all subjects, vanished into air. Among the broken fragments of the last 5 minutes at table, I remember the candles being lit again, pointlessly, and I was conscious of wanting to look squarely at everyone, and yet to avoid all eyes. So it's clear to us how uncomfortable Nick is by all of this. I couldn't guess what Daisy and Tom were thinking, but I doubt if even Miss Baker, who seemed to have mastered certain hearty skepticism, was able utterly to put this fifth guest's shrill, metallic urgency out of mind. And I love this fifth guest. So the mistress isn't even in the house, but she's always in the house, kind of thing, because everybody knows who's calling. And how could Daisy possibly forget about this mistress ever? To a certain temperament, the situation might have seemed intriguing. My own instinct was to telephone immediately for the police. So Nick is admitting, hey, some people might really like this situation. Let's watch how this plays out. All the drama. He's saying that he hates this and he wants to call the police to save him, to rescue him. So we will end our discussion of 1415 here.